saying congratulations on this album. I've been listening to it all week since they sent it to me, and it's absolutely amazing. So congratulations.
I appreciate that. Thanks. It's been a long time in the making. We wrote it back in 2020 and then recorded it in 21, and now finally end of 22 it's coming out. So it feels like quite an old record to us. So it's nice to hear that people are hearing it now for the first time.
Do you still get nervous when an album is coming out? Like you said, these songs have been with you for quite a while now, but do you get nervous knowing that they're about to go out to your fans right around the world?
Not as much as we used to. It used to be, terrible thing. You'd write all these songs and they go from the privacy of your bedroom or your little home studio, and then suddenly they're out in the world. We'd try and get all the reviews and read them all so that we knew what people thought. But I think 30 years on, we're a bit more confident, I hope, in what we're doing, and know that before we put it out there that we're already happy with it. I think the only thing for this one, it was, I remember somebody saying to me while we were writing it, they said to me, how's writing going with the new record? But of course they said it'll never be as good as Legends. So there was that kind of expectation that we'd kind of done a good one with Legends of the Shires, our last album. And there was a bit of a barrier we had to cross to show that we could actually get past that. But I'm happy. We weren't trying to make it a sequel in the end. We were just trying to make it its own thing, and I think it's come out okay.
Definitely.
Pretty happy.
Yeah. I was going to ask that about Legends, actually. So many people mentioned that was the perfect album from you guys, and it opened up, it seemed, the band to a whole new generation of fans. Did you feel that pressure in there? And if so, how did you overcome that pressure when you were working on this album?
Well, initially we overcame it by deciding to do a full-on sequel.
Yeah.
We were going to call it the Fall of the Shires and make it another double album, full concept album doing the same thing. But halfway through the writing process, we just felt like we were writing to order, and it felt a bit constraining and maybe a bit contrived. So we changed our minds and just thought, let's just make the songs stand on their own and not worry about trying to do a concept album. And it's weird because it was the opposite of when we were making Legends of the Shires. By doing the concept album felt really freeing for us. It was this whole new idea. We had this new creative stream, and we just flowed down it beautifully. And it was just like we just made a couple of tweaks to how we wrote. We had a theme, we went a bit more progressive, and suddenly the floodgates opened for all these great ideas. So it's kind of weird with the new one that when we tried to replicate that, it actually had the opposite effect.
Some people.
So in the end, just.
Yeah, go ahead. Yeah, yep, go ahead.
So in the end, it was just became an album of 10 songs that kind of have a theme and a thread, but they're not trying to be a story anymore.
Yeah, that theme, that's what I was about to talk about. It's it seems like there's a lot of cautionary tales with this album, but also that it's a bit of a darker album as well. Was that something that was present from the very start of the writing process with this album?
Well, I think all our albums have a bit of dark and a bit of light. And I think, to be honest, if it had become The Fall of the Shires, the full-on sequel, it would have started with a track called The Fall Part 1 and ended with a track called The Fall Part 2, which would have provided the setting up the story but also giving the conclusion with the redemption in it. So it would have maybe in that way been more of a balanced story. But when we took those two songs away and said, let's just make it an album of songs, we maybe lost some of that balance. So it really ends up dark, doesn't it? I think the end of the last song, Defence Condition, is probably one of the darkest moments we've committed to tape. So it's a strange way to end the record, but it's strangely compelling as well because it's quite epic.
Yeah. Now, there was a lot going on in the world in 2020 and 2021 with a pandemic. Did that change how you approached this album or how you wrote and how you recorded?
I think in terms of how we wrote, it probably influenced us because when you're an artist, you're always redepicting the world in a different way, whether you mean to or not. And so what was going on around us, I think you can hear that influencing the lyrics in songs like Silenced and Complex, a couple of the singles we put out recently. Probably all the way through the record, to be honest. You can't really keep the world out of what you're making,
Yeah.
But we're not trying to be political or, divisive or anything. It's just we're still trying to make art. It's just it's going to have different colours.
Yeah.
But in terms of recording, I think it was just slow because, we wrote it in 2020 and then we couldn't get in the studio till the following summer because everything was shut down. No one was allowed to meet up with each other. Businesses were closed. So we finally started recording it summer 21, and then even then it was quite a slow process. I think we finished by Christmas and delivered it in January, and now here we are, 10 months on. It's finally coming out, so it's been a long time in the making.
Yeah. Did the pandemic change the timeline of the album at all? Because I know that you were supposed to come to Australia and have some tours there as well, which all got cancelled because of the pandemic. Did that timeline change because those tours were cancelled?
Yeah, I mean, we weren't even thinking about a new record at the time, to be honest. We were just enjoying touring. It was, we had our old singer back, Glyn Morgan, and it was just feeling fresh and fun. And we were, as you said earlier, the album just seemed to open more doors for us, and we were touring in countries we'd never been to before. And very next on the list was going to be Australia, and we had a 5 or 6 dates booked down there. And we were so looking forward to it. In 30 years, we never got this opportunity. And then, of course, COVID happened and the world closed down.
Yeah.
So I'm really hoping that we get to do that in the future, and it won't take another 30 years to organise. But what that did to us is it just made us obviously stop touring. Initially, we just rebooked everything for 6 months later, certainly with the European shows, because we all thought it would be over by then, So we didn't really think about writing anything then. But then 6 months later, we had to cancel stuff again, and we had to start looking at different possibilities. So that was really when we thought, well, let's start writing again, because it might be a while before we get back out on the road. But thankfully, next spring, hopefully we'll start up the whole touring cycle again. That's the plan.
What were some of the countries that you got to go to with that tour cycle that you hadn't been to before, and what was it like going and playing in front of fans that you'd never played in front of before?
It was amazing. I mean, I think the first one was probably Greece, which we'd never been to. We went and played in Athens, and yeah, fantastic. It just made us wonder why we'd never been there, because we had a great audience and fans who've been fans for 20 years or so and been waiting for us to come. Then next time we went to America, we did a couple of shows up in Canada where we'd never been before and had very much the same experience. Fans who've been waiting all their lives to see us thought they never would, and now suddenly we're there. So it's like we're getting a hero's welcome wherever we went. It was amazing. And then closer to home, we did the same in Norway and Finland, places we hadn't been to before. And it was just, again, not expecting. We did this show in Helsinki, and it's probably one of the best club shows we ever did. And we're just standing there thinking, well, we knew we got into charts up here, and we knew we had some fans, but we never knew it was going to be this big. So it was quite a revelation. Made us realise maybe we've been pretty insular just playing in the UK and Europe all those years. So it's just great to have those doors open. And I think the only one we didn't actually get to do was the Australia one, which obviously was devastating for us. So hopefully next year or the year after we'll get to revisit that possibility.
Yeah. Were you aware of how many fans you have here in Australia? Because I've been doing this show now for a lot longer than I care to remember, and I've never known fans who will write to a radio station or now use social media but say to us, hey, this band's got a new single coming out, when are you going to play it for the first time? But that's happened with all 3 singles off this album so far with you. Are you aware of how passionate your Australian fans are?
Not especially, I guess, because we've never been there.
Yeah.
We see a little bit on the internet, obviously. Quite often with the internet, you don't know where people are from. But yeah, occasionally we come across fans from Australia and obviously other places too. But that's really nice to know. So yeah, keep on calling in, asking for our songs. We really appreciate that.
Definitely.
But yeah, I think it was probably the surprise that we managed to get a whole tour booked to come to most of the main cities. That was a big shock to us because we're so isolated from knowing what's going on in your half of the world. So yeah, let's make sure we get down there and meet everybody. That sounds great.
Yeah, that's what I was going to ask. Is there a plan for that to happen? Because like we said, it was going to happen. Is there a plan for that to happen now in the future?
At this point in time, I've got no idea. I think we've got to find out if the promoter's still in business, or the venue's still open. A lot's changed in the world.
Yeah,
I'm sure you guys know a lot more about that than we do. In terms of what's going on. So yeah, we just need to go and open all those doors again and see what's the possibility. So I think our first plan is tour Europe, because that's obviously our front yard, and after that we'll start seeing where else we can go.
Definitely. Now, we talked a little bit before about the darkness of the album, and you mentioned about that there's always been a darkness and light with albums. Is having that light there as well, is that something that's important to you as a songwriter, that you do have the dark times on an album, but is it important as well to include that light for your listeners?
Yeah, certainly for the music we do. I imagine if you're in a like super heavy death metal band, you may have slightly different ethos. I don't know, but yeah, life is about hope, isn't it? It's about hope and love and light and the struggle. Every movie you watch, you're wanting the happy ending. You're wanting the hero to succeed at the end. And so to write an album, you've already got that built into you, that you have to have redemption. You have to have a hope at the end. So I think that's been in our records ever since we started. And yeah, it's more to the fore when you're doing a concept album, because obviously you then start thinking about what's the story arc of the record and what are you trying to say with this album. And again, you eventually come down to knowing that every movie is made in the same way, isn't it? You've always got that struggle followed hopefully by hope at the end.
Everybody talks about the cautionary tales on this album. Was that something that you were striving for when you first started to work on it?
No, not really. It was they were when it was going to be a concept album. I think they were kind of the chapters, and the main stories that built up to make the whole story. And when we took away that concept, what we found we were left with all these cautionary tales. So Silent just talks about censorship, and another one talks about propaganda. I'm riffing off the top of my head because I haven't got the song list in front of me. Yeah. But you end up with just looking at different negative areas and then telling a story in that space. So no, it wasn't particularly intentional, but it seems to have worked out quite well in the end.
As a songwriter, I guess this is kind of asking like a favourite child almost, but do you prefer to be able to write to the concept album way of things, or do you prefer to be able to go into an album where you're able to write about different topics for each track?
It very much depends if you've got a subject worth talking about, I suppose.
Yeah.
I loved writing Legends of the Shires, so I wrote most of the lyrics on that one, and it was really fun because you've got a shape to write to. You kind of know what you're doing, and it was really enjoyable. And so actually, when the new album wasn't a concept album anymore, I was quite disappointed because I had what I felt was this great story, and it wasn't going to get told. So funny story, I actually went on and made that record myself. So I took the leftover songs that we hadn't used, and I wrote some more and wrote my own The Fall of the Shires, and just for myself, just as a private venture, and had no intention of anybody ever hearing it.
Yep.
But then, of course, intentions never go quite the way you think. I ended up playing it to somebody I knew at a record company, and they signed me. So I'm actually now got to make the album for real. So it's a very unexpected twist in the story. So there will be an album coming out next year called The Fall of the Shires. Just won't be by Threshold. It'll be a little solo project of my own.
Wow, that's absolutely amazing. And what was that like going away and recording on your own? Did it feel kind of naked because the rest of the band wasn't there, or did you find it a really, really pleasant experience to be able to do that on your own?
I love doing it, to be honest, because I did it just for myself. Any musician who's been doing it for as long as we have, you have a whole shelf full of stuff that no one's ever heard, all your old demos and ideas. And I just thought it was going to be one of those. I thought it'd be something I can enjoy listening to in the car, that kind of thing. Private project. I even gave it a stupid name just to be a private project. I called it Oblivion Protocol. I thought, that the protocol for this record is to be heard by nobody and to be seen by no one. So Oblivion's the perfect name for it. And so I kept the name. So that's actually going to be the name of the project when it comes out next year. But because I was recording for myself, it was just fun. I was just having fun, finishing the story, writing the music, playing all the instruments, and even singing. And when they signed me, I was just waiting for the day when they said, but of course you'll have to get a proper singer in. And they haven't said it yet. So I'm kind of currently getting away with it. So I'm actually the singer as well, which is something I never expected in my life. So life has strange twists and turns that you never know what's coming.
Definitely, yeah. And like as you said before, you talk about twists and turns. It almost feels like this album wouldn't exist at the moment if COVID hadn't have hit and we didn't have the pandemic. Did you guys kind of find that time, because of the heavy touring that you'd been doing, that there was also a time to refresh the batteries, and that's where the creativity came from for this album as well?
Yeah, quite possibly. I mean, obviously, we would have made a new record anyway. As it is, we're 5 years between this record and the last one. We wouldn't have wanted to wait any longer than that. That's a very long time between records.
Yeah.
Although, as I said earlier, part of that was because it's just taken so long to get through the process.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm sure it inspired us. And I think when big things happen in the world, it kind of changes your thinking, changes your mindset, and it gives you new, fresh ideas creatively. So I'm sure the whole thing fed in.
I know we're running out.
I hope we don't have to have another major event before we can come up with a new record.
Yeah. I know we're running out of time very, very quickly, but I wanted to ask about the artwork for this album as well, because I'm looking at it right now, and it's something I would love to have hanging on my wall. It looks amazing. Where did this artwork come from?
That's so nice to hear you say that, because that's always been my measure of an album cover. Is if you took off, for me, it's if you took off the logos, is it a beautiful piece of art?
Yeah.
And I remember when we had Hypothetical was an album we did in 2001. And I remember that one. I did exactly that. I got the artwork. I took the logo off, and it's a beautiful piece of wall art. And this one's kind of similar. It's a similar concept. You've got this floating structure above the earth, and so we've kind of carried on that theme. But whereas with Hypothetical back in 2001, you had this floating city that looked like it was from the earth, and it was all kind of tied in. It was all unified, you know. Can't think of the word I'm looking for. But when we did Dividing Lines, we kind of wanted to portray a change. You know, there's been a shift, there's been this dividing line. And so you've got the world is now decimated down on the ground, and it's all a wasteland. And then up in the sky, you've got this strange, hard to define structure that looks a world away from what's below it. And it's just kind of feels a bit like the way the world's gone.
Yeah.
You know, it feels like things are just breaking in that way, and so we just wanted a way to portray that looked beautiful. And the way we did it, I hate to say, I mean, in the old days we used to commission artwork, but the last 3 albums we've just trawled the internet looking for artists that we like the look of, and many hours were spent looking through different artist sites and various websites, and then we came across this guy and we saw the picture and we thought, well, that's it, that's our album cover.
Well, it's absolutely amazing. I'm looking at it now and I'm just absolutely mesmerized by how much detail's in it. Richard, I know we are right out of time. We are going to play Complex and King of Nothing back to back on our show right now. So what would you like to say to all of the listeners out there, not only before they listen to these amazing tracks, but before they go out and grab the album in a couple of weeks as well?
Well, thank you, first of all, for being fans, for requesting our songs. We really appreciate that. Really hope you enjoy the album. I know there's a lot of fans who've actually said, I'm not going to listen to the singles until the album comes out because I like to hear it in one go. So if you're one of them, you're going to have to block your ears for the next 10 minutes. For the rest of you, I hope you enjoy it.
Awesome. Well, mate, thank you.